Pure. Stats. NightMare. Bunny. Round of 16. Group B. Africa TV, Freak Up Studio, live. 2023 GSL Season 3.
Welcome back. Pure survives. Now it's all about elimination. Up next is NightMare versus Stats, our first PvP of the season, to see what that looks like in our current patch.
I feel like it hasn't, of all the matchups, I think PvP's probably changed the least
I think so.
in the current patch, but the map pool's a little bit different. There aren't too many maps with high ground expansion, so One Gate Expo might be a little bit more precarious depending on how the picks and the bans go. But there are some units like the Immortal, for example, the Shield. I feel like if you go for an Immortal all-in now in this patch, it does seem a little bit stronger. Now that the Shield, once it pops, absorbs the first damage instead of it also hitting the actual shields. I hate that they have like the regular shields and then hardened shields, and it keeps saying shield, and it's like, which one do you mean?
Yeah.
But we're gonna go to Solaris, Alcyone, and then Golden Aura.
Yeah, let's see what this looks like. I think these guys are both very strong at PvP right now. Again, very exciting to see Stats being back here. He is a very methodical player, but PvP functions very differently than the way he could play PvZ and PvT. Anyways, let's get into it.
Maturino Esports, NightMare. Guangdong Freaks, Stats.
A lot of support for Stats.
Yeah, a lot of love here for Stats. Well, I mean, this guy was such an icon for Protoss, and he was kind of showing everybody that there is a whole other way to play the race, almost like you're a macro Terran. And so, it's been very cool to kind of see exactly how how long that would last. And now that he's back and he's active again, will that style hold up? And frankly, I think this group is a tough group. It's kind of hard to call where his skill's at, because the Terrans here have been so good. But I think NightMare is a very good litmus test for this.
Yeah, NightMare's been playing quite well on PvP in online tournaments recently, at least from the games that I have watched. He seems quite solid, and Stats historically has really been struggling mostly in PvT since coming back from military service over, I guess it's been almost a year now, since I think he got out in November, if I am not mistaken. And it's been a kind of a long journey back to being competitive. He's been able to qualify for Code S, which says a lot. That is not easy to do now that it's top 16 after taking such a long hiatus and a military break. But it does feel like he's kind of following the same arc as a player like Sue, who was another, perennial finalist in all sorts of different tournaments. He was really the king of second place for a very long time before finally picking up a championship. But he came out from military service around the same time as Stats and also kind of struggled to really get his footing. He once again is qualified for Code S, but both of these guys are just really... Oh, Stats actually picks off the scouting probe there from NightMare. Maybe some jitters.
Yeah, that's actually pretty big.
But I do agree with you that this is a litmus test. Is going to be a much better way of seeing where Stats is at than before, because really it's been about the journey for him this past year in terms of regaining that past form, the same way that Sue is trying to regain his form. And if he can showcase some good games here in PvP and potentially win against NightMare, he really just has one PvT series to find his way back into the top 8. It is doable.
And so we're going to have that Nexus start down here on the low ground. The Sentry is being hidden very deliberately here by Stats. Up here onto the high ground. As we have the Nexus also start over here for NightMare. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty slow start. Nobody doing anything too dramatic right now in this PvP.
Oh, and I like this opening for Stats quite a bit. Normally, if you're going for a fast expand like this one and you're trying to play safe, you will go for just 4 or 5 gateway units. But Stats actually going for 3 Stalkers and 3 Sentries before Warp Gate. So
yeah,
He's doing quite safe. NightMare has to be a little bit careful depending on where Stats positions his units, although he did hallucinate, so only has 2 force fields available.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's anything that NightMare can do with those Stalkers, but a bit of an honesty check. You know, are you being too greedy? It's always worth it to have these moves that come out where if the other player is being insane and is doing stuff that they shouldn't be able to get away with, then you just get the punish. And if not, you go, okay, back up.
And in addition to that, too, being able to see that it is 3 Stalkers and 3 Sentries for Stats here right from the beginning with an expansion, it eliminates a lot of the possibilities of aggression that Stats could be going for earlier in the game. It means that there isn't a Dark Shrine on the way. It means that almost certainly there is no Oracle along the way, so NightMare can play a little bit more greedy back at home. Those 4 Stalkers, although it might seem small, them just poking up the ramp and getting a good look at the Protoss army on Stats' side of the map, actually getting a lot of scouting information for him. And this is the kind of the way you have to play it if you go for a 4-Stalker opening, because your hallucinated Phoenix Scout, such as this one, is a little bit later.
Now the tech is mirrored. They're both going for Blink, but there's a 5-worker lead here for Stats, now a 4-worker lead. So you can see he's sort of organized his build order to be a little bit more econ friendly here, and he's going to promptly take a 3rd base.
Yeah, PvP meta, at least in Korea recently, from what I've seen, has been a lot of 2-gas, occasionally 3-gas openings, with a lot of Blink Stalkers, a lot of Zealots, and very fast expansions, just emphasizing the minerals. So Stats now is going to add 2 additional gateways behind this, but NightMare not going for that 3rd base. He wants to get some damage done here with Blink.
Okay, well, he's going to come in right now. Guardian Shield is triggered. And Blink is going to be done first for NightMare. So I think this will be a forced cancel.
Guardian Shield moving forward with it. They really feel those extra 2 seconds that you get from the patch right here. Just waiting for that to expire, but Stats has to be careful. That is a lot of Blink Stalkers coming in from NightMare. The force fields are quite good.
Yeah, taking a little bit of extra damage there. And now these pylons are going to go down. And I mean, NightMare is just pressing his edge here. I can't say I blame him either. I was wondering if it might be worthwhile for him to try to blink into the main, maybe with like a hallucinated Phoenix to spot or something like that, but it looks like he's not going to do that. He's going to back up instead. The 3rd Nexus is taken again here for Stats, now at the same time that NightMare is also expanding. But if NightMare can sweep around here and do another big shot, and it looks like he's actually trying to fake that.
Yeah,
the
look at
hallucinated
this.
Phoenix is actually just a bait, so he can come in here and get the deny on that Nexus.
That was killed. That wasn't canceled.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is minus 400 minerals. Now, Stats does have a small window to try and get some damage done on these Stalkers, but only 1 falling. And the resources lost right now is so vastly in favor of NightMare. This early pressure paying big dividends for him in this PvP as Stats not only cancels the Nexus, but also loses 500 minerals in total, basically thrown away there. And that's not even counting the shield batteries and the pylon on the low ground as well.
So, I mean, NightMare is playing a pretty masterful game here. There is going to be a counter punch here by Stats. I think that NightMare should still be ahead, although the angle could be a little bit uncomfortable. Let's see how far he can push in there. Guardian Shield is triggered. NightMare is going to continue to just press forward with the aid of that battery. Stats shimmies away and then gets into actually a better angle by a lot. I'm a little bit alarmed to see that NightMare stood his ground for that long out there. Some probes were killed by the Adepts that came in, but overall, this attack was brushed off, and it seems like NightMare is basically ahead on every metric.
Yeah, I think Stats trying to go for that push there at the 3rd base was really to open up an avenue of attack for the Adepts and the natural expansion, get some harassment done. But now he's going to meet NightMare's army here in the middle of the map. NightMare has a Warp Prism, so right now it might be quite even Stalker versus Stalker. But once these additional Stalkers warp in, I wouldn't be surprised to see NightMare just try to start blinking forward and actually killing the forces here of Stats. As that's exactly what he does. Stats running all the way back home. Those Stalkers so low on HP, and I think this might just be a killing blow.
Yeah, NightMare's going to move down here and be able to basically meet this army as it tries to retreat. And now that Stats basically has to hold his ground, but I don't know that he can do that because he's basically driven a wedge here in between the 3rd and the main. He blinks in again. The damage is very punishing. And even with a battery, well, remember the battery? Never mind. All right, GG, NightMare gets that kill.
That was a masterful PvP from NightMare. I mean,
yeah, I mean, he got his advantage. He pressed it forward. I loved the faking of the hallucinated Phoenix to make it look like he was going to blink in the main, because I was saying a second ago, oh,
yeah.
it might make sense to do that, but actually he set that up really nicely to get another punish on that Nexus, which, by the way, was not canceled. It was killed.
Yeah, NightMare basically won that game with the early pressure, canceling the Nexus on the third, killing the pylons and the batteries there as well, and then with that beautiful maneuver navigating around the north side of the map and sniping the second follow-up Nexus. As you have a resource loss differential in a mirror matchup, any mirror matchup at all, and you're going to be playing on a knife's edge, but in PvP, Blink Stalker versus Blink Stalker, if you're down like 6 or 7 Stalkers because you lost those Nexi, it's a NightMare situation, and that's not a, I guess it is a play on words, but I didn't mean for it to be, but I mean, NightMare just absolutely capitalized. He recognizes it, he goes for the killing blow, and that's him up 1-0 here against Stats in the elimination match.
All right, guys, we're gonna go into map number 2 now. NightMare with a 1-0 lead versus Stats. Again, the loser is knocked out of the GSL.
Match4 Esports NightMare. Guangdong Freaks Stats.
Okay, getting into this game. NightMare, I think he played a really good game. It's also funny, Stats really went back to just Stats things of kind of gradually getting to third base, trying to stay ahead. I feel like Stats' style in general is one of the harder styles to be consistent with. When he was on top of the world, it was really remarkable to see him kind of parry everything, continue to develop, and then basically win with a more sophisticated economy and army against these players that were just running around trying to shut him down.
Is he saying hi to me?
It must be, man. I love watching you like become confused by seeing yourself in the science center. You're like, wait a minute.
Second? That's me they're talking about, maybe, Tassels.
But, you know, it's a hard style to pull off when you play really defensively. Because you basically have to have a perfect game. If you slip up somewhere along the way, you're going to get punished. And we're kind of seeing Stats slip up somewhere along the way in these games. Will we have a more decisive Stats, maybe even a cheesier Stats? I do feel like most of the time you have to have the complete picture as a player. You got to know when to do the crazy cheese, but you also have to have very solid fundamentals and macro styles that you can bring out as well.
Yeah, Stats, when he was at his absolute peak form a number of years ago, was one of those players that, as you said, had pretty much the best all-around defense at all. But occasionally he would spice it up, he would mix in some cheeses, and it just made preparing for him a little bit harder. But now it seems like, you know, coming back from military service and trying to get his head in the game again, he's just defaulting to exactly that defensive style, because it is kind of, I agree with you that it's hard to try and play kind of a catch-all style that can parry truly everything.
Yeah.
It's difficult if you're a Terran, Zerg, or Protoss to play that style instead of going for aggressive mix-ups. But I think that Stats is just trying to focus on this one style because he's had limited time coming back from military service. It's hard to master both offense and defense at the same time. So I do like the approach in that way, but as you said, it does make it a little bit easier for opponents to read him and potentially, you know, take some risks that could pay off in a best of X series against Stats as a player.
Well, we've got these two Adepts coming up here. The probe is ready to block this, so luckily he doesn't even commit all the way up. I was going to say, is he going to guess? If he can get in or not, he didn't have vision up on the high ground just yet. NightMare's got an Oracle coming along, and so the builds are now taking very different trajectories. In game one, we had, for a little bit, mirrored tech, but it was really the earlier Nexus from Stats that gave NightMare the opening. You know, in a race where you're both even, where you're both even, an investment in another base will allow that other player to maybe have an opening to do some damage. Here, it's going to be two very different techs.
Yeah, NightMare going for the Adept harassment into an Oracle expand. Battery going to get dropped here in the main base once more, and I actually don't recall if we had a shot of a battery in the main mineral line. I want to really take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually either.
Okay, well, he does see the Oracle now. Adept's coming into the natural expansion. They cancel that Shade too, and actually NightMare showing a lot of respect. Not going into the main base right there.
That's some real restraint shown there. He's going to come back through here once more.
Yeah, potentially
Basically
trying to catch.
scouting.
Right. Scouting, and also I think he was trying to catch. Oh, he's going to get it.
Oh!
Nice play there by Stats. I believe NightMare was trying to catch some of the probes that were transferring in from the main base. You know, he's like, I look at like I'm going north out of the natural expansion and going back home, but instead I just kind of sneak back around and get the probes. But that time, absolutely didn't pay off. And losing the Oracle like that is really big in an opening like that one. I mean, I don't want to say there's no excuse for it, but it's the whole purpose of this delayed natural expansion here for NightMare is to get that Oracle out, to potentially get a couple of probes, and then as the game progresses, if that Oracle stays alive, Stats constantly has to have a small number of Stalkers at home, not to deal with, you know, harassment on the probes getting killed by the Pulsar Beam, but because of stasis wards. But you also get that Oracle Revelation coming in for scouting. You know exactly how your opponent is building up. You're able to rely on that Oracle for DT and thus delay your robotics facility as well. So NightMare going for a 1 Oracle opening and getting immediately shut down with, I think, basically no damage. He might have gotten 1 probe. Is just not a good situation for him. So both players not going to expand to the 3rd base, but Stat's going to be a lot more comfortable to play this game knowing that he sniped down that Oracle.
Okay, so we've got more development here. Now, when you see that gateway up there at the top there from Stats, that's telegraphing a push. But it's 3 base to 2 base, so it's like, how would you push a guy? You spend all that money on the Nexus. Obviously, eventually, the income will kick in and you'll have more, but it would seem like if he was to try to do this right now, I don't think this would fare too well.
I think Stats was anticipating NightMare going for a really fast 3rd expansion, possibly at the linear base, and then
ooh, hello.
Stats can come in with that warp in at the top side, potentially get a lot of damage done, but NightMare actually just going to go for the gold base. I like that play a lot.
I think he's going to spot this hidden pylon and gateway.
The Adept spotted that one a little bit earlier there, the ones that shaded into the 3rd base, so NightMare just goes for the finishing blow. And Stats, I wonder when he's going to scout this gold, because if it goes unseen for a considerable amount of time, he might have kind of a bad read on what the game state is.
So, yeah, I mean, any map with a gold base, you should always be checking your side and their side, but especially their side. But I don't see that happening just yet. And basically, if they get a gold for a longer period of time, you should be worried because they're going to be much more competitive than you are economically.
Yeah, the Hallucinated Phoenix checked every possible expansion except for the gold base.
Yeah.
You know, he did see that there was 1 mineral patch mined out between that 3rd, but I don't know if he actually noticed it and he recognizes that it means a gold base is here. Stats might just think he has to defend on 3 bases and win this game. In fact, I believe he actually might have stopped probe production here. So a little bit of a misread.
Right. So he did the recall to get all his probes over there. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. It does appear like he's basically bracing for impact, and I don't think impact is coming anytime soon here.
I love this play. Oh, he's going to get the Observer, too, adding insult to injury. Some probes will get taken down here. I imagine NightMare's just going to pick off a couple and then potentially go for the recall. This is good harassment coming in. I'm so surprised he did not recall those after killing like the 4th probe.
Because once you actually recall on the Nexus over there.
Oh, that's right. It's on cooldown. Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot.
No, I mean, I guess he's just going to have to sacrifice those Stalkers to come in and try to do some damage. He does kill some workers. Keep in mind that, like, right now, workers, it's 56 to 49. And NightMare has the gold, Stats doesn't. So, like, Stats has been played pretty badly. And a lot of this just comes down to incomplete scouting. Now, I think he may inadvertently spot this base over here.
There's no way he knows. I mean,
no, he doesn't know. Well, maybe he suspects it. Who knows?
But if he did, you got to check it now. Okay, he sees the probes. He saw
Did
the
he
probes.
see the probes?
He should have seen the probes.
You would think he would edge in then and kill the probes.
Oh my God. Okay, so finally Stats realizes now probes are going to go down here at the third base of NightMare. Link coming through, but the attack coming in for the top side. NightMare might just try to pounce on this. We'll see.
Good moving back here. Meanwhile, these Zealots are just shredding up this base down here. It's all about buying time at this moment. Now, Stats sends a couple of stalkers over there to hit the gold base. Meanwhile, these Zealots are getting log jammed.
Oh, that's a big recall.
Warp Prism!
Warp Prism's going to get taken
Boom.
out. Nexus should get sniped by those stalkers, their final blows. As NightMare's counterattack will finally get cleaned up here from Stats, but I think Stats would have loved to just, you know, ramp up the pressure over there.
Yeah,
onto NightMare. I mean, he does get the Nexus, so certainly some damage found. And I think his position's actually improved a lot with that catch, but still the worker count's very low here for Stats. NightMare now trying to retake another expansion, going for the triangle third.
Yeah, the army is considerably bigger here for Stats, but if NightMare can rely on harass, maybe he can just kind of keep the opponent a little bit busy. Now that you can really feel the pain of that Stalker cooldown, a couple of them get eliminated over there. The third base, the new third base finishes, and it's just Stalker. Well, hold on, he's going to get an Archon now as well. I was going to say just Stalker Zealot for a little bit, but we're seeing the rest of that tech get incorporated. But it's undeniable that Stats has a bigger and better army. Unless NightMare gets a really good engage, like at a perfect angle, I think this is going to be too tough. Oh my God.
Oh my God, the force field coming in too. That was not where you wanted to blink, NightMare, as the armies collide in the middle of the map, and Stats had pretty much the optimal engagement there, catching all of the Blink Stalkers. Before we started this, I think the army supplies actually had come close to equalizing.
Yeah.
But what a moment there for Stats, a lucky break. Or perhaps he was planning on that all along, trying to shoo those stalkers away into the corner. In any case, a tremendous victory for him on the battlefield, and I think he might be able to push that into a win now, just waiting out this overcharge.
Yeah, he's just going to be patient. Wait for the optimal moment to try to come in and do the damage you want to do. He should be able to kill that Observer that's over there as well. A Warp Prism's going to come in to help reinforce. Warp Prism's on both sides, in fact. And I mean, I'm kind of feeling like Stats wants to pull the trigger here.
Yeah, I think he almost definitely will. Zealot count and Archon count very high here for Stats, and with a Warp Prism now flanking the rear, reinforcements are going to be quick to come. No battery overcharge anymore as the armies collide. So many Archons here for Stats. Not all of them firing here as the Stalkers try to blink to make way, but the Arc is just massive. The army supply is huge.
And Stats winning this game in a very Stats-esque way, just through sheer patience. NightMare's trying to hang on. He's trying to use whatever angles he can get here. The Archons are starting to lose their shields, and with that, the position is gone. That's it, GG. We're tied up 1-1. It's going to be game 3 to settle the score. And we'll find out who actually gets eliminated here.
Kind of a wonky game there.
Yeah.
With that gold base, Stats not necessarily being aware of it, but finds it, and I don't know, he seems like he might be a little bit upset that he didn't have that read. He looked a little bit pouty. I think he opened up the replay and it's just like, how long did he actually have that gold? Oh, I really should have spotted it.
Well, I mean, it's one of those moments where it's like, yeah, I mean, any map, especially mirror matchups, gold bases are very tempting to take because it's such an easy way to get a lead, and the fact that he scattered everywhere but there is a little bit concerning. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, still he was able to come through the win. I think one of the players might have been requesting a pause, and no, it's a good time to take one. 1-1 here in a PvP with the elimination match coming up. One of these players is going to be sent into the Netherrealm. Another one is going to be trying to fight against Buddy. It's the Netherrealm, man. You're getting all Yu-Gi-Oh up in here. That's a Yu-Gi-Oh reference, right? I'm not
I was
enough
thinking
to
Mortal
actually
Kombat.
know.
Isn't there a Netherrealm in Mortal Kombat?
Netherrealm's in a lot of games, I think.
Yeah.
But it's going to be...
it's never where you want to go, though.
No, it's not where you want to go. And NightMare just really trying to survive, fight for his life. As I said, he's been looking really good at online tournaments recently. He's having pretty much the best GSL showings of his career so far this year. He's not getting into the round of 8, but he's getting top 16s. He's getting top 12s. He's doing it consistently. And I think he would really love to cap off this year with finally a breakout performance into the top 8. But Stats really fighting back, even after not scouting that gold base, which surprises me, you know? That went up for, I want to say, a couple of minutes, and then Stats was still able to maybe through a little bit of fortune, a little bit of luck, find his way into a very winning position. But, you know, the defense in Macro back at home, it was still very solid.
It was. It did seem like NightMare was never prepared to deal with the consequences of being scouted. Like, he did have that for long enough. He probably had enough to actually fight that. But the angling was very good from Stats. He got in there, killed that off, and it was a pretty straightforward game from there on out.
Yeah, it was really a smart play also, just blinking 5 or 6 Stalkers to actually just focus down that Nexus during all the following battles. Because at the end of the day, if those Stalkers on the other side of the gold base don't kill the Nexus, and NightMare is able to resaturate that base
And
while he's taking
base.
the fourth,
yeah.
then suddenly, you know, he had a worker lead, I believe, during a lot of that still. Or at least it was very close, but the mining was not optimal.
No.
And so if he had that gold base, he's able to resaturate it, then suddenly his army supply is not going to be dwarfed by Stats in quite the same way. And he has winning chances, but instead, Stats just making some very good reads after, you know, a little bit of a lack of scouting and able to bring it back. But I think if he wants to win this upcoming Game 3, he's going to have to tighten things up just a little here in PvP because NightMare is a very dangerous opponent and certainly does not seem to be afraid of shying away from some kind of cheeky builds.
Golden Aura for map number 3. We're finally getting our third game here with these two. It's been a lot of fun to watch this. Stats continuing to stay conservative and grow. NightMare with some pretty risky stuff he's trying to pull off.
Match4 Esports NightMare. Guangdong Freaks Stats.
Okay.
Let's see if Stats decides to mix it up or goes for the same opening, because Game 1 and Game 2, he did the exact same thing. I think it was a 3 Stalker, 3 Sentry opening, all 6 of those units coming out before Gateway, or before Warp Gate, excuse me. And that's about as safe as it gets if you're going to try and go for an expansion. But, you know, if you're going to mix up a build, now seems like a really good time to do it from Stats' perspective, because NightMare is probably anticipating that Stats is going to play the same way. At least I would if I was in NightMare's shoes. And so if you're NightMare, maybe you take a little bit of a gamble. You go for a little bit more greed. Maybe you take a faster third base than you would otherwise, or maybe you go for some kind of proxy aggression and try to play into the fact that Stats is going to be going for that Nexus, seemingly no matter what.
It does seem like Stats is one of those players where he's so known for going macro. It kind of reminds me of the old days with Idra or Idra, where it's like people just sort of knew this guy is a macro powerhouse, but he doesn't cheese. And so you see all these players play around that.
Yeah, I certainly did.
Yeah, I did too back in Brutal War when I played with.
I gambled. I rolled
where
the
I was
dice.
like, well, I mean, I'm not going to go toe-to-toe in a macro game with you, so let's build some buildings right outside your base and see what happens.
Absolutely.
But it does seem like Stats can fall into those trappings as well, right? Where, you know, because he has such a straightforward approach to the game, it opens up an opportunity for some of the more risky angled play that could come in and get a kill quickly. It can end up impacting him.
Yeah, but also, you know, opening with the 6 gateway units like this before Warp Gate is such a safe style that you got to think a player of Stats' caliber, he wouldn't be doing this build unless he was confident that he could parry pretty much any attack that NightMare is going to throw his way. So, not a big surprise to me that Stats is kind of going for the same thing once again. And so now my question is, what is NightMare going to try and do to see if he can pick this apart? He is opening with 2 Adepts moving cross map. So far, Stats' Adept defense has been on point. But no Stargate follow-up from NightMare just yet. In fact, no Nexus either. I see the probe now moving to the natural expansion, so finally that will go down. But a little bit later than Stats is.
Okay, Adepts shade forward. The probe's there to plug up the entrance. We've got 2 batteries on the way right now for Stats.
I love this opening that Stats is doing. I mean, if you're a Protoss player at home that's watching this and is struggling in PvP, which I certainly am watching this is a build that I'm going to go out on ladder and I'm going to start using, because I can't tell you how many times I've died to all-ins or builds that are just designed to pick apart on expansion. But Stats with this, 6-unit style before Warp Gate into a battery. He always has the minerals floating to throw down his second battery up and block should Adepts come in, because he delays the Twilight Council just slightly. It's so safe. And the fact that a player of Stats' caliber is relying on this all 3 games in an elimination match, best of 3 PvP, shows that he has a lot of faith in the defensive capabilities. And NightMare, once again, with the same edge that he had, I believe, in Game 1, with a slightly faster blink because he is cutting a few more corners. He's not playing quite as defensively as Stats is. I wonder if he's going to be able to find the same kind of damage that he did when he went for that timing attack on the 3rd base.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, Stats is just, staying back, being calm, being patient. By the way, it is a relief when you see a player solve something for you. You're like, oh, there it is. The answer was somewhere. We just had to wait for someone else to find it.
It was also me watching Creator. Group A at PVZ.
Like, oh, thank God.
It's one of the beautiful things of having GSL back at the start of a new patch. Is actually, hold that thought, NightMare getting a ton of hull damage in.
Yeah. See, Stats got a little greedy trying to get that one Adept kill. There's that 3rd Nexus. There it is. Both sides. Still with mirrored behavior.
Yeah, NightMare this time seems like he's a little bit less keen on the high aggression, but I like that he's kind of feigning the same pressure. He moves out at about the same time with Stalkers and Sentries, similar to the way that he did in game number 1, trying to force Stats into a position where he's going to be potentially delaying his Forge, maybe adding in a couple extra batteries to try and defend, but Stats so far seems to have a good read. Not quite falling into that trap, as both players instead are just going to macro up, but at the end of the day, NightMare's Forge will be a little bit faster, and I got to give credit to him playing this way with this slightly feigned aggression style. It's one of the advantages you get.
And so NightMare's still roaming. He's still trying to find some opportunities here. This could be a really weird angle for an engage.
Yeah.
You can see the Guardian Shield is triggered there as the rest of that army snakes around to the other side. Could he get over here where the Nexus is?
I feel like he cannot get the deny here, but maybe you could try and set up a play with these 2 Adepts going into the natural expansion or the main.
This is actually crazy. Hold on. I think he actually can get this.
It's close.
This angle's a little bit better here for Stats.
Yeah, and he should have another quick warp in right there with the Nexus, but it did open up these Adepts coming into the natural expansion. They're going to get a handful of probe kills, especially if the focus firing is good.
Meanwhile, a fight over here on the bush. It seems like Stats was winning, but maybe actually NightMare could take this. Kind of hard to call.
Oh!
There were also Adepts over here. We didn't even catch that.
Got 5 kills going down on Stats' side of the map, but he's equalizing it. But actually getting a couple more over here. Adept going to go into the main base, no batteries, so should be able to get 1 more probe. That's going to be 7 kills. I love that Stats went for that counterattack. I didn't even have that on my radar.
No,
I was so focused.
I didn't see it. Well, I mean, the Observer didn't have it on his radar either. We totally missed that. Is there continued counterplay here?
We've all been there.
Oh, yeah. This happens sometimes.
It's embarrassing.
There's a lot of things you got to juggle at once in this game.
I like Stats' position. He's up 7 workers. He has 1 more Stalker. Upgrades are a little bit delayed, so there might be a timing window for NightMare where he's able to eke out some advantage, but oh man, there's no probe here again. That's going to be more probes going down. Should Stats have committed, I think he easily could have gotten 2 or 3, but instead just wants to play it very safe and conservatively. Powering up with additional gateways on both sides. Both players opting to play 3 gas styles, so a little bit more Stalker heavy, not going to be pure Zealot coming in, but inevitably we'll have some Archons added into the mix. These Adepts do get cleaned up here on the top side.
Okay, so these...
Oh, he's looking to catch them.
Yeah, he's going to try to catch these stray Stalkers. I think there's enough escape routes. He should be okay.
I think he blink once more and then recall, but...
Probably, yeah. Now, is Stats going to try to seesaw back on the map? Or no? So here's the 4th base, by the way. NightMare could not have gotten a 4th base yet because of where Stats' Stalkers were, but maybe he'll try to take one now. Conversely, it's also possible that he just tries to power up and maybe go for a push.
Yeah, he's actually taking the 4th gas, so he's going to be playing a little bit more Archon heavy than his opponent here, and that makes me think increasing the amount of saturation on 3 bases with the delayed 4th, that NightMare is probably going to be gearing up to be the aggressor here on Stats' 4th expansion. Army supply is very equal, though. There's more pylons coming in now for Stats as his economy is almost fully online. Those gateways are not going to be idling very much from here on out, so I love him preempting those 4 pylons in case he has to micro on the map.
Well, there's no way Stats can get up there. Quick blink in there. And I mean, we're just seeing sort of this arms race of units build up. More gateways are coming down. A War Prism starts over here for Stats. That could be, you know, the signal that we're going to have an actual push out here, or maybe like a warp in inside the main, and then he tries to break the 3rd or the 4th base. But it does look like there's going to be an opportunity for Stats to truly initiate.
I'm surprised we haven't seen a Warp Prism come in from NightMare just yet. Just the Zealot Stalkers, some Archons now being morphed in.
Ooh, he's going to keep going forward here. Wasn't an overextension. You can see the Zealots come back on this side for Stats.
Yeah, Stats was actually thinking about taking a fight there, but I think he has it on his radar from that Hallucination Scout earlier that NightMare is going to have an upgrade advantage window. So for Stats, I think you pretty much want to play defensively up until +2 ground weapons is finished. You do not want to fight into someone with higher upgrades than you with the same unit set. It's generally not a winning formula, as NightMare's +2 ground weapons going to be finishing in just a moment, and Stats just really content to kind of macro up back at home. But once he has that +2 ground weapons, I would not be surprised to see him get a little bit more aggressive on the map, especially with his Prism.
Yeah, it's been a pretty dramatic build-up here. We're just now passing 10 minutes. Both sides are nearly maxed out. This angle looks a lot better here for Stats. Is NightMare going to commit? Oh my God, the arc is insane.
I love NightMare blinking in, sniping the Warp Prism there. The reinforcements are going to be a little bit faster here for NightMare as a result. And actually, this angle is so good for NightMare. The Archons get picked off, and now Stats is on the run.
It was crazy. It looked like it might be really good for Stats for a second there, but we're going to see that final Archon fall. The Warp Prism's been sniped. Where exactly is NightMare going to zig and zag to?
Seems like he's going to focus on this 4th base. Chases that pylon. Might get taken out. Luckily, there's a second one powering up that battery overcharge, but Stats actually going to take the fight right here in this concave. He thinks he has the better angle and wants to fight before reinforcements come in, but finally, those reinforcement Zealots enter the fray. Some Warp Prism micro attempted here by Stats. Does he have enough? I mean, the shield battery, it is doing work, but that's a big Zealot warp in.
Yeah, it looks like NightMare's got this with a great warp in there. Really good execution on his micro when he had that engaged. He knew exactly where to target, exactly when to pursue, and also when to back up and reinforce. And I think from this position, we should slowly see Stats begin to crumble.
Yeah, once this 4th base gets taken out, there's going to be very little economy left, and the standing army here for NightMare absolutely dwarfing Stats. 65 army supply to 30.
Yeah, he forces him to blink away and instead goes for an easier target down here at the 6 o'clock base. The Stalkers are going to come out. They should be able to blink once more, but they just don't have the muscle here to take this on, and I think we're basically seeing Stats process the loss. That's it, GG. NightMare is going to that final match against Bunny.
Stats eliminated here. First one out of the group. Group B elimination match. I like the playstyle that he brought to the table, especially in the early game, that safe expansion style, but NightMare just taking some key decisive fights, both in Game 1 and Game 3.
Yep.
A lot of respect shown by NightMare.
Well, Stats, you know, he's still got it, but it does seem like he's not able to navigate these extremely difficult games all the way to where he wants them to be. You know, he is still playing the conservative style, macro Protoss, scouting Protoss, defending Protoss. Not the kind of craziness you'd see from like Hero or Parting or other players in the past, SOS as well. But, you know, he's not able to get across the finish line.
All right, going to be taking a look at the matchup. I thought for a second we might be going to the commercial
did we just
break?
go to a commercial? What's going on here? Okay. All right, guys, we're going to be right back. It's NightMare versus Bunny coming up.
Yeah, we ain't gonna stop.